There is a fermented food you can make in your kitchen for about $1 a batch that dissolves the blood clots that cause heart attacks and strokes, and it does it in the laboratory faster and more completely than aspirin. It has been eaten every morning for breakfast in Japan for over 1,000 years. The country that eats the most of it has some of the lowest rates of heart disease and stroke on Earth, and the enzyme responsible was discovered by accident in 1980, when a Japanese researcher dropped a spoonful of it onto a dish of artificial blood clot and watched the clot simply melt away. The global market for blood-thinning drugs is worth more than $80 billion a year. Drugs with names like warfarin and Eliquis that require prescriptions, monthly refills and constant monitoring, and that carry a real risk of dangerous bleeding. And this food, which does much of what those drugs do, cannot be patented, cannot be prescribed, and can be made at home by anyone with a pot of soybeans. This is natto, and the reason it is not on every breakfast table in America is the reason nothing that heals for free ever is. Welcome to Lost Plant Remedies. Let me tell you exactly what this food does, because the science behind it is genuinely remarkable, and it starts with that accidental discovery. In 1980, a researcher named Dr. Hiroyuki Sumi was working in a laboratory studying substances that could dissolve fibrin, the tough protein mesh that forms blood clots. A clot in the wrong place is what causes most heart attacks and most strokes, so a substance that safely dissolves fibrin is close to the holy grail of cardiovascular medicine. Sumi tested compound after compound. Then, almost as a joke, he dropped some natto, the fermented soybeans he had eaten his whole life, onto a plate of fibrin. Within hours, the clot had dissolved, and it had dissolved more powerfully than anything else he had tested. He isolated the enzyme responsible and named it nattokinase. What makes nattokinase extraordinary is that it does not just prevent new clots the way aspirin does, it actively breaks down clots that have already formed, and it does so gently, working with the body's own clot-dissolving system, rather than forcing it. Studies since then have documented nattokinase reducing blood pressure, improving blood flow, and lowering the markers of clot formation in human trials. A 2022 review in the journal Biomarker Insights catalogued its cardiovascular effects across multiple studies. But the clot-dissolving enzyme is only half of what this food does, because natto is also the single richest food source on Earth of a nutrient most Americans have never heard of, vitamin K2. And vitamin K2 does something your heart desperately needs. It acts like a traffic controller for calcium. It takes the calcium in your blood and directs it into your bones, where it belongs, and away from your arteries, where it hardens into the plaque that stiffens and blocks them. A landmark study out of the Netherlands, the Rotterdam study, followed thousands of people and found that those with the highest vitamin K2 intake had dramatically lower rates of arterial calcification and death from heart disease. Natto contains more K2 than any other food ever measured, so this single fermented food both dissolves the clots that cause heart attacks and pulls the calcium out of the arteries that lead to them. Two of the deepest mechanisms of heart disease, addressed by a bowl of fermented beans that cost about $1. So here is the question that should stop you cold. If a food that costs $1 does what an $80 billion industry sells prescription drugs to do, why have you never heard of it? Why is it not in every grocery store, recommended by every cardiologist, eaten at every breakfast? The answer is the answer this channel keeps arriving at. You cannot patent natto. Nattokinase is a natural enzyme produced by a bacterium during fermentation, and vitamin K2 is a vitamin, and neither one can be owned, monopolized, or sold at the margins a pharmaceutical company requires. A blood thinner like Eliquis brings in billions of dollars a year precisely because it is patented, prescribed, and taken every single day for the rest of a patient's life. Natto generates none of that. You make it once, from beans, and you make it again forever. There is no company on Earth with a financial reason to fund the massive trials that would move Nattokinase from the shelves of Japan onto the prescription pads of America, because at the end of those trials, they would own nothing. And there is a second reason, a simpler one. Natto is, to the unaccustomed palate, challenging. It is sticky, stringy, and pungent, and it does not survive the American supply chain or the American breakfast table the way a pill does. So it was easy to ignore, easy to forget, and easy to leave in the one country that never stopped eating it, because the rest of the world, as always, never forgot. In Japan, Natto has been eaten daily for over 1,000 years, sold in every store, served in every home, fed to school children, and credited by the Japanese themselves as one of the secrets of their extraordinary longevity. It is not exotic there, it is breakfast, only in the West, with our aisles of shelf-stable food and our faith in the prescription bottle, did the most powerful cardiovascular food ever discovered become something almost no one has tasted. So let me show you how to make it, because this is the part that matters, and it is genuinely simple. You need 2 things, dried soybeans and a starter. The starter is either a purchased packet of natto spores, which costs a few dollars and lasts for dozens of batches, or simply a spoonful of existing natto, exactly the way you would start a sourdough. First, rinse and soak 1 to 2 cups of dried soybeans overnight for at least 12 hours until they double in size. Second, cook them until they are soft enough to crush between 2 fingers, either boiling them for several hours or far faster, pressure cooking them for about 40 minutes. Drain them and let them cool until they are warm but not hot, because too much heat will kill the culture. Third, stir in your starter. If you are using the spore powder, mix it with a spoonful of sterile water first and stir it through the warm beans. If you're using existing natto, just stir a spoonful thoroughly through. Fourth, and this is the only step that requires care, you must ferment the beans at around 100 degrees Fahrenheit for 24 hours with a little airflow, because the bacterium needs both warmth and oxygen. A dehydrator set to 100 degrees works perfectly. So does an oven with only the light on, or a warm spot near a heater, with the container covered loosely with a cloth rather than sealed. After 24 hours, you will see the beans bound together with the characteristic sticky white strands. That stickiness is the sign of success. Refrigerate the finished natto for a day to let the flavour mature, and it will keep for a week in the fridge or months in the freezer. Eat a small bowl, a few tablespoons in the morning, the traditional way, often over rice with a little soy sauce and mustard to balance the flavour. And here is the beauty of it. That single batch gives you the starter for your next batch, and the next forever. 1 packet of spores, or 1 spoonful of natto from an Asian grocery, and you never need to buy it again. Now the honest cautions, because this food is powerful, and powerful means it must be respected. Nattokinase genuinely affects your blood's ability to clot. If you're already taking a blood-thinning medication like warfarin, aspirin or Eliquis, do not add natto without talking to your doctor first, because the effects are additive and combining them could thin your blood too far. For the same reason, stop eating natto at least 2 weeks before any scheduled surgery. If you have a bleeding disorder, the same caution applies. And a note on the vitamin K2, which can interact with warfarin specifically. This is a food that does real things in the body, which is exactly why it works, and exactly why you treat it with the same respect you would give a medicine. So think about what has actually been done here. The pharmaceutical industry does not want you to know that a fermented bean dissolves clots and clears arteries for $1 a batch. They will not tell you that a Japanese researcher proved it in 1980. They will not tell you that the country that eats it daily has among the lowest heart disease rates on Earth. They will not tell you that the only reason it is not in your pharmacy is that no one can patent a bean. They will not tell you because there is no profit in a breakfast food that quietly protects the very organ their $80 billion depends on keeping sick. But the bean does not need their permission, and neither do you. Picture yourself a few years from now, while others depend on a monthly prescription, a monthly blood test, and the constant low fear of the clot that has not come yet. You walk to your kitchen, lift the lid on a bowl of beans you fermented yourself, and eat a breakfast that has quietly protected 1,000 years of Japanese hearts. That's not just food. That is independence from a system that profits from your fear, and it costs $1 a day of patience. Every person who learns to make this carries a piece of their own heart health that no company can ever sell back to them. If this opened something for you, subscribe to Lost Plant Remedies before this video disappears, because we cover the foods and the forgotten knowledge that $1 trillion industry would much rather you never went looking for. And if you want me to walk you through your first batch of natto step by step, along with 4 other forgotten remedies, grab my free 5-day course, The Lost Ferment, linked in the description below. It costs nothing. The Japanese never stopped eating this. It is time you started.